Hi, I'm Cecily Armstrong. Welcome to Digital Hollywood. Let's give Digital Hollywood a round of applause. And we are opening this thing up. So I'm so thrilled you guys are here. I will ask you, because what I love to do on these panels is to get right to the panelists. So I will ask you to refer to your program that has everybody's, bio and who they are. We're going to introduce them as well, but I don't want to spend a bunch of time rehashing that when we can get to the meat and potatoes, so to speak. So again, thank you so much for being here. This is the power of influencers, accelerating brand value across platforms from internet, TV, mobile, and social networks. My company is Nitex Productions. I'm the CEO and executive producer, and I'm located in between San Antonio and Austin in the gorgeous Texas Hill Country on the wine trail. So we drink lots of wine and eat lots of olives and do that kind of stuff. And have been in the media and entertainment business for over 30 years, based in New York and LA. And then figured out I can get to New York and LA from Central Texas just fine. So please reach out anytime. My information is also in the program. And keep in mind, as we're going through this, we will wind up with a Q&A. So make sure that you scratch down some questions and keep those in mind along the way. I encourage you, too, to make sure that you say hello to Victor Harwood, the founder and visionary of Digital Hollywood. He's worked really hard, and any of you going to the dinner tonight, it's really going to knock your socks off. So let's get started and let's have some fun. So I'm going to start with Spencer.
Great. Hi,
Tell us who you are,
yes.
And spend 30 seconds to a minute on your company.
Yeah, sure. Spencer McClung. I'm with advisory firm 3. We're a consulting business, management consulting. We work with early stage through late stage startups, entrepreneurs. We help them build their businesses and help them with their strategy and brand building in particular. And we also work with private equity and VC firms with their due diligence process and portfolio companies.
Thank you. Isaac?
Hi, everyone. My name is Isaac Rosales. I work at Univision Creator Network. We started as an MCN, I think, 5 years ago, when that was still a cool word. We're now more branded content, and I oversee all of our branded content for influencers and also find opportunities to plug in our influencers into linear opportunities like traditional TV or radio to see if we can boost kind of our ratings and reach a bigger audience or a younger audience.
And Jade, hello.
Hello, my name is Jade. I'm a partner at Abrams Artist Agency. I focus mostly in the digital department, which is representing content creators and influencers and bringing them into traditional businesses and building out consumer products and all of the above.
Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg Martin. I'm an actor and content creator where I write, shoot, edit videos for influencers and also for brands, and that's me.
Owen.
Hi, I'm Owen Leimbach. I'm a co-founder partner at Tiny Horse. We're a company that works with most of the different types of folks in ad-supported entertainment. We work with usually premium shows and IPs, premium brands, and premium distributors, and we help them navigate the audience that they used to have that they've lost over the years. How do they reaccumulate an audience? How do they reach new audience around good IP?
Awesome. Brian?
Hey, I'm Brian Sokolik, talent manager at Authentic Talent and Literary. We are a pretty traditional talent management company ranging from writers, directors, actors, and I work in the digital department, so anyone from the creator of Criminal Minds to Brie Larson and JB Smoove are part of our company, and then in digital we represent creators that are digitally native and work with opportunities both online and crossing over to traditional as well.
Awesome. So I'm going to start with you. I'm going to pick you on the end down there.
Right.
Okay. So I'm really curious, and I think our audience hopefully is too, because the fragmented state of influencers right now, there's been a tremendous amount of change as to what is an influencer, and identifying that, qualifying that, and then micro, and all the different levels of influencers that there are. So I'm curious, from your personal, professional point of view, and your company's point of view, where do you think the state of the influencer industry is right now?
Yeah. Wow.
You have 5 seconds.
No, it's a big question. So, I think what we've seen is that through social media, everyone in this room is becoming an influencer, and we are seeing fragmentation, micro-influencers, nano-influencers, and really the power of UGC and brands that are getting good at harnessing the passion of their users, the passion of their consumers, and finding ways to repurpose that content. And it is content in lots of ways. There's sifting through it and coming up with strategies of how to harness that, how to multiply it across different channels, across email and across site and across, obviously social. And so, what we're finding is that brands that are getting really good at understanding their consumers through their content are really resonating with their user base.
Yep.
I just add on to that. I think that there's a really big difference between talent that have a lot of followers and then talent that have influence. And there are people that have really large platforms that are speaking on, entertainment and comedy and, scripted opportunities, and then there are people in specific niches like DIY or beauty, where the power that they have over their audience in terms of influencing what their purchases are is a very different kind of following than someone who has millions of followers but doesn't have a real expertise in a specific category and doesn't have a following that looks to them for what is that next item I should be buying or what that looks like. So that's another kind of, when you're looking at working with an influencer, understanding the difference between those two.
And what about brands, Isaac, if you could, that's great, Jay, because it really does bring up, what are your brands asking for? I mean, are they, because you're multi-platform, right? So are they looking more at the category specific, like Jade was talking about, let's say beauty or DIY? Is that more important to them? Is that the top line box to tick, in other words?
We refer to the type of influencers that our brands look for as unicorns. It's very, very hard to find what they're looking for. And it goes more with what Jade is saying. It's not so much they want the biggest one. It's one that it has the most engagement, that is most influential, but it also fits within kind of the culture code of the brand. We kind of do two things where we're looking if they fit within the culture of Hispanic America, like if, not necessarily just like on a stereotypical level, but on a very kind of deeper level, and also if they fit within the deeper level of the brand. So a lot of times we are looking for micro-influencers, mid-tier influencers, and celebrity influencers, but it all kind of really depends, goes back to what can they afford, and then also if they are telling that story, because sometimes influencers actually turn brands down and say, hey, I don't feel like that, like I can be saying I use Clorox every day, because I don't.
Right.
So it's very kind of in the unicorn land, and they're getting more savvy, which is kind of exciting. It's maturing as a business. I think in the past year, even here at this panel, they referred to it as the Wild Wild West. It is, but I think it's more mature now, and they're more savvy.
And Owen, you...
Yeah, I got lots of thoughts on this. I
we-
think generally
into the mic.
there's two big categories of brands, and some of them just want to, at really a brute level, want to move product. And I think you'll see a lot of them really open to transacting over platforms with micro-influencers. But I think especially, Isaac, in your space, a lot of the premium brands who have a lot of brand equity, they want Univision, right? They go to Isaac for a reason. They want really premium, and it's very hard to find digital talent who is robust enough to handle the kind of brand relationships that someone like a Univision or an NBC or a Fox is built over 20, 30, 40 years of understanding what the brands want. And they, if you have a lot at stake with your brand identity, then you're going to want someone who understands what you have at stake with your brand identity, and
Right.
you're going to want to be partners with them. Broadcast networks understand that, and they've been in that business for a long time.
Right.
Very few influencers, to your point, understand it. And so I think when you get big influencers under the tutelage of people who are used to working with brands, then that's a good combo.
And I do want to take that and talk to Greg and Jade about that, but I want to start with you, Brian, because really we're looking at talent management and that tried and true relationship that we talked about before, which is different than using a platform that's an algorithm to find you a spokesperson, right? So if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think, Owen, that's where you're leading with, these large companies like Univision and major platforms that do have a lot of different platforms under their umbrella. You look at a company like Discovery Communications that I've lost count of how many brands and platforms that they have, but they expect that A-list. So,
I understand the question.
well, we talked about this previously, about talent and managing talent that can be sort of that A-list and tick those boxes like Owen was talking about versus finding somebody on an algorithm.
Oh, yeah. I think that our standpoint from this is that it's still a human business and that there's only so much that you can get from data and statistics. And so, there's a lot of platforms out there that we see popping up every day where they put in, we need this type of person with this type of following and this and this and this, and it breaks down into, maybe a specific type and a specific type of numbers and a specific following, but you don't know that that person's actually got the right voice and the ability to speak to your brand the way that they need to. And so I think that that's where us as talent managers come in as sort of a, an A&R and evaluating what, different types of talent can do and be that spokesperson to the brand and say, this is why you should work with this person. Maybe on the surface it doesn't look right, but if you look at the audience in this way and you look at who their fan base is and how they talk, this is the right person, and it takes that kind of human interaction to get there.
And Greg,
I was gonna, I was going to add, and also like if you're a brand, I think you have to look at like, are you going for conversions or like brand awareness? Because I think a lot of brands are like thinking, oh, someone has 1 million followers, like it's going to convert and I'm going to get 50,000 sales if they're like selling a product. It doesn't really usually work out that way, because a lot of people might be, not even have purchasing power. They might be in their teens or something. They might be overseas and you're selling a product in the U.S. It just depends on the level.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an age-old challenge for marketers. I mean, it's not new. You have folks who are willing to do direct mail, but Coca-Cola is never really going to do direct mail, right? They're
Right.
going to buy, polar bear spots on the Super Bowl.
Right.
And so there's a range of brands and their needs, people who are standing up kind of brandless products or services, and they're willing to do one type of service with influencers, and then another brand that has 2 decades, 5 decades, and billions of dollars invested in their perception to customers and selling like high fructose corn syrup water. There's a lot of it takes a lot of money to make people want
Right.
to feel good about drinking that.
Right.
But those guys have a completely different, set of needs, and it's just the same way that there's been different distributions. There's been direct mail for the guys who have a certain need, and there's been national broadcast for folks who have a different set of needs. And it's really just, we always look at influencers as like just an evolution in distribution, really. If you think of it that way, they're all publishers. You used to have a few radio networks, then you had a few more broadcast networks, then you had cable networks, then you had the internet, and then you had social media. And so you just have more options. It gets more complicated as a brand to piece together your distributions. But
Right, so it's sounding to me, and I love that of thinking of influencers as publishers. That's, I haven't heard that before.
It's like Condé Nast. I mean, you
Yeah.
go to Condé Nast.
I know
and
it
they
well.
have
Yeah.
This, you go to Brian, and he's got a suite
Right.
of publishers,
Right.
that are talent. That
I think
do
it's
certain thing for you.
I think it's interesting to look at that way, because then it becomes, as a talent manager, what are you coming to me for to buy? Are you coming to buy distribution, or are you coming to buy the talent?
Yeah, well,
And it's sort of
distribution
two
in
separate
a quality
things.
context.
Right.
Right. You go to. Why would you go to Fox to buy ads over NBC?
Right.
There's different flavors. They're both high quality distributions. One has maybe more of a polish to it, and the other one has more of a rawness to it. And your brand is in the rawness. It's Axe body spray.
Right.
NBC is GMC or something.
Right,
It's,
right.
they're
So
different.
it's coming down to the buy. I mean, Jade, do you find that with the influencers that you represent, that they have to align with the criteria for that buy by the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Brian, you might have mentioned it, that our clients turn down a lot of opportunities that don't align with their brand because the number one thing to them is their authenticity and loyalty to their audience. And they're very smart, and they know that as soon as they lose that loyalty and that trust, they have no more business. So that one-off brand deal, that, let's call it Axe deodorant for someone who is anti-perspirant. That was not intentional. That would say like to sweat. It doesn't make sense. So as soon as you, in some way, sell out, your audience isn't going to look to you anymore for your advice, which is what their whole business is built upon. So it really is making sure that it aligns not only from the brand's perspective, but from the talent's perspective as well. And that's why we represent, I'd say, 100+ top tier influencers. And at this point, we're talking to a lot of our clients and saying, instead of waiting for the brands to come to us, which brands do you want to work with?
right.
Because that's where the partnership comes from, that's where the collaboration comes from. That's when you can say to the brand, this is what I want to do. These are the things that I'm excited about. Do you want to be a partner in that with me so that we can both build our brands together?
Oh, and this is why I like your product, too, and this is why I see
Yeah.
attributes in your product that are similar to the attributes that I value, right? And that makes brands swoon. That's the Cupid arrow for
Yeah.
brands.
Yeah, and I mean, that comes with obviously having that leverage. You can say that when you have millions of followers, you can say, hey, this is what I want to do. But, when you're starting out, you take what you can get, and you build from there, but you stay true to what your audience is, and you stay true to what your brand is.
So we're really talking about, after this buy, we're talking about the deliverables and how to measure it and all the above. I mean, Spencer, Isaac, you want to weigh in on that? I mean, I'm curious, Isaac, with the multi-platforms that you have at Univision, do you have different case metrics for whatever? I mean, you might have one influencer delivering message that might be a parsed message and highly produced for each platform. It's the same influencer, so overarching same message, but delivered in a different way based on the audience segmentation and the platform and all that stuff that makes your head hurt. And so when it all comes out on the end, how do you measure?
Sure. So I think some of my favorite campaigns are the 360 campaigns where we tie them to a big temple. And we're activating basically the whole sales team, basically the whole solutions team in Miami, New York, LA, all the different people that are kind of approaching and touching that client. So for example, T-Mobile will be our main sponsor for a temple event, maybe Latin Grammys. And we do obviously spots, we do a lot of social, we do a lot of digital. Our influencer, we work with really savvy digital agencies that produce content specifically for the platform. So we don't approach it where, hey, use the same type of content and distribute it across all platforms. It doesn't really work.
Right.
And influencers will push back on it. If we
Right.
tell them, hey, that Twitter video that you did, can you post it on Instagram? They'll say no.
But people
Doesn't
still
work.
think that, I mean, I'm just like shocked that there's pushback to that.
Well, sometimes, yeah, it's when we get
It does cost more, but
yeah.
in the end, does it cost more?
In the end, it doesn't do well. It doesn't perform well.
Right, exactly.
And it feels off, right? So I think we work with agencies that will create even just custom content, even
Right.
if it's a GIF, even if it's a story, even if it's Instagram, and we
Right.
see those the ones that are performing the best. A lot of times, one of the ways that we also find ways to add value to brands is pairing them up with a celebrity. So for instance, J Balvin is releasing his music and we pair him up with an influencer and they're just happy to be there. They're extremely happy to be there. They are fans of him. It's kind of catapulted them to a different level, even if they're not celebrities themselves. So they overpost, overshare. Obviously, they're still delivering what we've asked them to and we measure on a daily basis. The good thing is that we're also in a really good relationship with these talent,
Right.
obviously with their managers and agents involved, but we have direct access to them. If it's not doing well, we can ask for more. Or if it's, maybe they forgot a hashtag. Like we're really measuring everything, and we use a software called Creator IQ to measure in
right.
real time. And obviously also do a recap report and say, hey, this is how you performed or how you overperformed on digital, and then TV does the same thing.
Spencer, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think, measurement's a tricky thing, and we're all trying to figure it out. It really starts with, I think, setting your objectives, really what are you trying to accomplish with working with any particular influencer. And then it's sort of this quantitative and qualitative goals when you break it down. And on the quantitative side, there's great tools out there, Tubular Labs, Creator IQ, Social Bakers, there's a lot of them that can kind of help you, once you've established your objectives, kind of hone in on those quantitative metrics. And then on the qualitative side, to me, that's where the real magic happens, because if you can, and Jade was referring to this earlier, if you really have that genuine connection between that creator and that brand, that's when the real impact happens and the real engagement happens. And that's also a tricky thing, is really getting to know those influencers and thinking of them beyond that kind of paper transactional kind of relationship. to a much more strategic, deeper relationship, and finding those friends of the brand, and then really investing in them, thinking about what are the things about this creator that they really care about that I can then align myself with and really harness that relationship. And the qualitative side of it is as tricky as the quantitative measurement side.
Yeah, and on the way other spectrum, on the quantitative side, we've one of the ways we like to approach this with people, with brands, because every day brands are planning and buying based on media metrics, and based on their media mix models, and the way that looks to them is, I'm going to buy this much YouTube in Q2, and I'm going to pay a 6-cent CPV. I'm going to pay 6 cents cost per view.
I just want to say, is the audience familiar with the concept of how this media is purchased? Show of hands. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Dive deep a little bit.
It's awesome.
Think of Wall Street on a terminal in a media buyer's office.
The reason we should all be interested in this is because this is how, when you're looking at brands, a significant majority of their marketing budget is spent on media map.
That's right.
It's a minority is spent on creative. Minority goes to Chiat Day. Minority, goes to Droga 5 to make your really super awesome ads, and then the majority of that money goes into distributing those ads, and that distribution is paid for in a cost per kind of environment. There's cost per on TV, there's cost per on Instagram, there's different on YouTube, cost per view, cost per impression, cost per click, all these sorts of things. So we like to, and we found that brands are really reticent to move significant dollars into influencer space because it feels like juju land, right? Like funny money over there, and they can't really get the clarity of the buy that they can in television. Because I know in GRPs, I'm paying exactly for the people I'm reaching.
It feels safe. It feels usual.
Right. And so
path of least resistance.
It will always be experimental money on the influencer side until we started maybe 4 or 5 years ago taking this trove of data that comes from all these different tools that are out there, and there are a lot of really good ones. You can look at, okay, how does this person's video generally perform? Okay, this many views. How many are in the U.S.? Okay, how many are in DMAs where you want to actually buy it? And what's their cost to do a video? From that, you can reverse engineer actual media plans that look and feel like real quantifiable media to brands, and you can actually then begin to scale up big, verifiable, deliverable programs, and you can then under-deliver, and you can have to do make goods, and it starts to feel like television buying.
Right.
And that's an approach we've taken for the last couple of years. And
Sneaky,
it helps people.
very
It's not sneaky, it's transparency. It's basically like, look, this is the new television, and it can be quantified in the same way, and actually better.
Right.
We can do it, not quite on a GRP.
I know, it's just interesting because, as a talent agency and as someone who represents talent, I don't look at my clients as just a distribution platform. I look at them as a talent. So we have a lot of brands that come to us and say, well, this is what we want to pay. We want to pay a 6-cent CPV. And I'm like, my talent is not your distribution platform. They are a person and a human, and they have a connection with their audience, and they have a lot more to offer than just your 6-cent CPV. And it's just interesting because it's the hybrid agencies that come from media and then have a really good understanding of what that media looks like, but also have an understanding of what talent and what a talent can bring to a campaign. That's the happy medium, and figuring out which one, how to find that balance.
And I'm sure there's times, I've seen them up close, where let's say a brand, an agency does take a risk on an influencer, and they're working with an incredible manager like we have on this panel, and they say, okay, sold, we're going to do it. But they've told themselves, probably not going to work, and that's discretionary money. If we lose it, we're okay. And then they knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
So then it's a bunch of quick, fast, hurry up, scramble, and how can we leverage this talent? So I'm curious, as a manager, how do you handle that? Are you teed up and ready when that fortunate thing happens?
When the unfortunate, the campaign didn't perform?
No, the fortunate,
When it
it's
does
good, it's good,
But no one knows why.
but nobody knows why, that's what I'm saying.
Because the
Yeah.
media map didn't even work.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's interesting because, and I don't represent Jaclyn Hill, but a long, long time ago when Becca, a cosmetics brand, took a chance on working with the first big beauty influencer, their highlighter destroyed. It was just off the shelves, couldn't keep it on, made so much money and brought Becca literally into the world of makeup.
Right.
And I don't think they would have, I mean, this was like 6 years ago.
6 years ago, yeah.
I don't think anyone would have seen that coming, and Becca would not be where they were. I think they sold for almost $1 billion to Estee Lauder. I don't think anyone could have predicted that. So when that happens, and I'm sure she got a nice chunk of change, but I'm sure she could have gotten a lot more had they predicted what would have happened. And so those are like the risks, rewards of all of those kinds of opportunities, but I'm sure you can speak to it more.
Yeah, no, I think it's just sort of more in general what we've been talking about, how they're two completely separate businesses.
Totally
And
are.
so I think that we're still trying to figure out how the two communicate, because like you're talking about a media buy, and if you come to me with that, my response is going to be, like we keep saying, well, this is a human,
Yeah.
and what are you trying to buy? And I can't guarantee you what's going to happen because who knows? But this is what we think will happen.
Yeah, historically, if you look back, and we had the same thing. Well, most of us come from MTV at Tiny Horse, and so we were really used to work, and we're producers, so we're really
Right.
used to working with talent on a daily basis. And getting into this world, we were there when YouTube happened and when Facebook happened, and we watched the kind of the bottom drain out of the network, and the talent drain as well. And when we got into the broadcast world and we started realizing this is actually how people do. TV networks actually are here to serve the purpose to translate between these two people, because Pepsi looks at it as buying Simon Cowell when they invest in the X Factor. But guess what? They're buying on a CPV, but the network makes all that disappear. They have talent people in there that deal with the talent, and then they have salespeople that deal with the media math.
Right.
And in some back room somewhere, they do the math and they say, hey, we just made an 80% margin. This is a sweet business. Let's call it television, right?
Right.
And so there is a middle business that stands in between, at really high levels. And I sometimes think that media math was invented to keep brands from transacting directly with talent.
Keep
right?
on. I remember the days of Condé Nast where editorial and publishing didn't ride on the same elevator, so, yeah, boy, times have changed.
Yeah.
So, Greg, based on this last bit of conversation here, so you're sort of straddling the talent and producer and distributor role. So, what are your thoughts on all
luck with
this?
Yeah, right.
Which hat are you wearing today?
Yeah, right. I was actually going to say that if you're working with an influencer, make sure in your brand, make sure the deliverables are clear, because a lot of the influencers get like really upset if you're like, oh, you need to revise this or change this. I guess it depends on what level of influencer it is, but I remember that this one brand we were working with like kept doing revision after revision after revision, and the influencers just like, this is it, this is the final, I'm not doing any more with you. And that was because in the contract beforehand, it wasn't like clearly defined like exactly like what was needed. Because a lot of influencers, I mean, if you're not like a huge brand and you're going after like the really big people, a lot of the smaller influencers, like, if it's like $1,000 deal or $500, like they get really excited about the money and they don't care about the contracts, and then the brand's just like, well, we don't need to do a contract, we'll just PayPal them and just like, push it underneath.
That's what Venmo's
Yeah,
for.
Venmo or, Cash App or whatever. And then you get into trouble where, either they're not delivering and they have the money, or you didn't pay them or whatever. So I would just lay everything out like beforehand, for sure.
So let's talk about brand safety. Sort of as a segue into that. Who wants to jump in? Because, for me, I think about what Greg's saying, and, I go back to, well, it's a talent contract, it's negotiated, there's, all kinds of nice things in there that really are a roadmap as to guide not only the talent, but to manage the expectations that then, as we know now, at the end, will reveal itself in the metrics. So these are not mutually exclusive things. This is each side of this equation all touches each other. So let's take a quick poll here of the audience. I'm going to interrupt myself. Influencers, want to be influencers? Trying to be influencers? Okay. Producers? Aha. Writers? Business affairs? All right, nice smattering. What did I miss? Marketing. Oh, my God.
The money.
Yeah, you got it.
Party. Who's paying for all this?
It's too close to me. Sorry. The most important part, marketing. So having said all that, so let's talk about brand safety, because there are a lot of touch points, and I feel like the seamless end result to the consumer-facing side is, they don't want to see, we don't need to show that, right? It's the duck on the water where it's nice and smooth, and underneath is all the paddling that's happening. So folks that paddle, how do you manage, and what are the heightened awareness now for brand safety?
Oh, I was just going to say, we work really closely with YouTube. And YouTube had, a couple of years ago, their adpocalypse, where brands were being shown against ISIS videos and really terrible videos. And a lot of marketers and brands pulled out. That got resolved. They cleaned it up. They put different content categories into, I think, 3 different brand safe categories, which is like very safe, safe, not safe, don't do it. And then, so that got resolved, and there was a new round of adpocalypse, I'd say 4 months ago, where people were leaving really profane comments on kids' content and any content that showed kids. And again, everyone freaked out, and YouTube completely disabled comments on a lot of channels that either featured young kids, or I think they went really above and beyond, kind of really to nip that in the bud. So in terms of like brand safety, YouTube does a really good job, I think, of policing it. And then for us, our revenue model is based off of our clients making money from brands and from selling content to different OTT platforms. So for us, our clients, that's why a lot of the brands and producers and networks and studios, that's why they come to us, because we have our business model is based off selling our clients, and the only way to sell them is for them to be brand friendly and brand safe. So it's a lot of trust with the representatives, and knowing, okay, if they're with you, that means something. That means that brands are working with them. That means that they produce content on time. It means they produce content that is quality production. So I think that in terms of brand safe, it's the relationship they have, brands with the representatives.
And is somebody, this is sort of, I don't know, out there a little bit, I'm looking down the road, but we're talking about branded content, Univision, everybody up here works in that space, but is somebody in the writer's room from the brand? Like, is there that, is that like fear in everybody's eyes? Is that coming around the corner here, where there is some brand involvement? It is that balance between authenticity and, but let's face it, you have to declare on social media platforms if it's paid or not, so.
I'm sure, Isaac, this is your daily business, is
So-
standing between the brand and the writer's room.
I will say that it's probably every brand's nightmare to have spent billions of dollars, built a perception and an image, and then all of a sudden be, associated with an influencer that said something wrong, did something wrong, and it happens more than often. It's kind of like the norm now, where, even last week there was something with James Charles. 3 weeks ago there was something with, Laura, I forgot Laura Lee, Jake Paul. So it's becoming a big thing, and I think even AT&T pulled out of, spending any money on YouTube. So for us, because it's one of the most important things, and they kind of trust Univision as a brand that, we control what's on broadcast, it's our number one priority. For the past months, we've been focused probably 90% of my job has now been focused on that, and building out really rigorous checklist for anybody that we work with, and vetting process. So if someone is in the network that we work with, or someone brand says, hey, we want to work with that person, it kind of takes us a while to confirm that they're safe, because we don't want to just work with them.
And what is the process, so our audience is.
So for us, it's kind of like multiple steps. One, we look at the past year at all the platforms. Have they said anything that could be a flag? Have they posted anything? And these are just really obvious things, but then we have a checklist of 10 to 12 things of, it's violence, is it sexual innuendo, is it provocative? It's really, some of this stuff is really hard to qualify, because it's very subjective, right?
Well, and it's like you're having to vet someone that doesn't have the history of a of an A-list,
Exactly.
you know, Hollywood star that has a box office receipts to look at, a body of work to look at, you know, it's almost harder, right?
It's a little bit harder because it takes time. We do use, you know, there is like a few tools that we use to see if, you know, their followers are fraudulent, if they have, you know, half of their audience in India, probably a big flag, right? But also we look at their content. And some of this stuff is a little bit subjective because if someone is posting a picture of them in a bikini, is that like provocative? What is the intent there? Can we propose that person to the brand? And, you know, sometimes we have to be kind of very on the safer side, but we do kind of like flag everybody. We want to catch everything before the brand does it. Because if we propose someone and the brand catches it for us, it's, you know, it's a lot of revenue that's out of the door. We don't want to be in that situation. The second thing is we also have really close relationships with the managers and talent. So if we do see something and we're going to flag it, we text them and we say, hey, you know, that picture that you put up there, I know it's 420, but, you know, it's not legal in all the states. We work with Walmart. They're very conservative. So you kind of have to make a decision, like if that's where you're going to go creatively as an actor, as a person, that's fine, but you might not be being pitched by us. So we're building it. We're having continuous meetings, kind of training the people that are selling for the brands, and also in the next couple of weeks, we're rolling out a lot of guidelines for our influencers because we don't want to just say, hey, you're flagged. We want to kind of give them a lot of tools so that they know ahead of time.
Right.
And it is those tough conversations. I had a conversation with the manager yesterday, which was about 420. He was like, well, you know, he's very open to it. And I was like, I get it. But it's like, it's a decision between, again, kind of the creative or you want to get brand money. And it ultimately comes to you guys, right? Like, they're human, and what decision do they want to do? But we can't put ourselves proposing to brands because then we get flagged.
Sure.
Sorry, it's a lot of stuff, but it's very complicated. Brand safety is the number one, I think, priority for everybody this year.
Would everyone agree on the panel in your
Yeah.
various areas? Like, I haven't heard that over the last few conferences, not only Digital Hollywood, but, you know, other conferences or, you know, newsletters and industry and that sort of thing. But now it seems to be like a red alarm going off,
and I think
that
each
for a
of us-
long time it wasn't.
Each of us plays a different role in what we take part of in brand safety, and that, like, as a talent manager, especially in this space, most of my clients, or all of them, are between the ages of 18 and 24. So
Right.
they're young, and there's a lot of education that needs to happen on how these things work. I need to talk to the brand reps and the agents and everybody to learn, and YouTube to learn what is considered safe now, and then go back to the client and have a conversation of like, I'm not your dad, you can do whatever you want, but like, if you want to work with brands, maybe take that post down. Like,
Right.
it doesn't offend me, but I'm hearing from other people that this isn't good.
Yeah.
And the brands are doing their research too. They're going to find something.
Well,
They're
that's,
gonna find-
yeah, that's sort of where I was going, the fine marketing departments and the marketers that are key to making all of this happen, the backbone, just kidding. So in any case, yeah, I mean, internalized these brands. I think the last thing you want to happen as a platform or as the talent or as management is for the brand to come to you and say, our marketing department
Well,
surfaced this. Yeah.
And there's, I can't even begin to express the amount of pressure, increased pressure on marketers that there is, as, you know, the days are gone of doing like a single brand safe buy and being able to kind of set it and forget it. You're now responsible for coverage on 20 platforms, 5 of which will be out of business in a couple of weeks. And then their reps are coming through and their media sales folks are coming through pitching you all their wows and zings and all this kind of stuff and all their brand safety filters. And it's like, it's bewildering, and it's a game of gotcha. I mean,
Right.
you're almost destined to get caught, and you have to place money, you have to reach audience, you have to figure out where not to overlap your audience. There's a Byzantine number of platforms and ways to buy, and
I'm exhausted.
I'm tired.
I'm going to say that there's a difference obviously between Walmart and then like Fashion Nova. And Fashion Nova has Cardi B as their spokesperson. So there's a place for everyone, and that's what the most important thing, I think, as representatives when we talk to our talent. You can choose whichever direction you want to be. You just need to stay true to yourself because you can't play both sides. You
Stay
can't
in your lane.
Yeah, you can't be fake, and then when you want to get brand money, change your image. you got to play, we got to do what you want to do, because that's what makes the power of influencers so powerful, is that they are themselves and they're not playing a character, they're not playing a role. They might be playing an exaggerated role. But, you know, so for example, like if with Cardi B, Cardi did not change at all. She's not going to work with Walmart. She's probably not going to work with, you know, SC Johnson. But she'll work with Fashion Nova. She'll get her coin, and it's great. And that's what makes that relationship so powerful.
Right.
Yeah, I think back to what Jade said at the top of the show.
And then we're going to take questions, so
Awesome.
everybody get ready. Go ahead.
So I feel like we've reached a pinnacle of confusion with multiple places where you have to buy and be responsible for coverage. I think that a lot, and from a talent side too, what we've seen is, look, a lot of talent doesn't want to be trading in and out of deals either and sponsorships.
Right.
Long-term relationships with people who fit your brand is actually the way to go. Look,
Yeah.
if you guys want like a one-on-one takeaway, do that.
Yeah.
Right? Go
Right.
find talent, interview like 20 folks, you know, that are talent managers.
You mean the old-fashioned way?
Put the due diligence in to find great
Wow.
talent. Do the Jordan way. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like how many shoes has Jordan sold for Nike? More than their measured media.
Right.
Right.
And you can also hedge bets on someone you might think is about to blow up and, you know, build a relationship with them because it might be a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Okay. We've got about 10 minutes of questions, so I want to get in as many as possible. Mr. Fancy Blue Jacket, very handsome.
Oh, thank you. My question is, whoever wants to answer it on the panel, but I did look up Tiny Horse online, so I looked at your website, your company. I'm curious as to the gamut by which the types of content that you're producing. Because obviously it can really run the gamut from low production budget material for certain brands to higher budgeted shows. What is your focus as a company, as a brand, within that market? Because I think it's getting very confusing, you know, with all the opportunities, but also the distinctions. Where do you go to you know, to the companies that are matching the right production companies with the right content?
Yep, and we actually, we don't take such a bias on the type of content so much as it is the type of IP at the center of it. So we'll work with what we would consider premium IP. So anything that's a broadcast show or talent that's a repped and managed talent that wants to do something. And once we have a group that's working with, say, Fremantle on American Idol, we will produce all kinds of stuff that looks raw and that looks broadcast quality. But it's really less about, and this goes back to our, you know, roots at MTV. We produce gross stuff that's timely, right? Because that, you know, shaky cam video is just as good as Terrence Malick stuff if in the right context. But so what we focus more on the core IP, and then we produce whatever needs to be produced around it, whether it's feature, broadcast, or Insta stories.
So it does run the gamut.
It runs from content type, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious, do you guys rank the social media platforms in terms of effectiveness? Do you guys favor one like Facebook over Instagram, or what is your guys' take on it? And is Twitter still relevant for you guys?
Jump in.
We don't do as much YouTube branded content anymore. I think primarily it's Instagram, Insta Stories, heavily Insta Stories, and Twitter and Facebook, but less and less YouTube.
I think from the
Yeah, I think
talent
it's-
side, it's completely dependent on the person. I mean, I have people that I work with that they convert on YouTube and not Instagram, and I have others that convert on Instagram and not YouTube. So it just sort of depends on what the relationship they have with their audience is.
Spencer?
Yeah, and what the overall objectives are is really important. I think it's hard to really say one's better than another. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, Instagram is an amazing place these days, clearly, for branded content and for, you know, working with influencers. But then YouTube, you know, you can tell a story on it, and you can really, you know, kind of engage your brand into that story if you have the right influencer. It really depends on your objectives.
Go ahead.
I'm interested in terms of UGC content, brand-driven, influencer-driven, influencer-driven, whether you're seeing that more as sort of upstart brands, direct-to-consumer, like sort of MeUndies or Dollar Shave Club. Because if you look at, say, Mary Meeker report this year, for the first time, branding was the top of their concerns as opposed to conversion. So I'm wondering, you know, what's happening in terms of, is it mainly these upstart brands that are looking for a conversion that's happening in the UGC space, or is there some branding going on as well?
That's interesting, because I would say with, we see so many D2C brand deals on Instastory. There's so many, like you said, MeUndies, but also like the Vanity Planets and the Quip and I'm trying to think like fashion, a function of beauty. They are spending a lot of money on InstaStory because it has the swipe up, and you can go directly to the website. So in terms of like, that's probably their most cost-effective way of acquiring new users. But then with the brand awareness campaigns, like the Coca-Colas, like, Visa, those are, I still think they're spending a lot of money, but they're spending it in more unique ways and not necessarily, one story frame, call to action, swipe up, purchase. That's, it's less about the conversion and more about the narrative and the story that you're trying to tell with the brand. So I would say that maybe the different platforms lend itself better to D2C businesses and startups, but traditional brands are still spending a lot of money. Amazon, Google, they're all still spending a lot of money to market their products.
It's a great question. I missed Mary Meeker's most recent one, so I'm going to have to go back and find that. But even a lot of those big brands we're seeing go D2C as well, with Unilever purchasing the Dollar Shave Club and those kinds of D2C brands. I'd put it again back into the same frame as it's really about the story. And one of the things that I feel like is broken down that used to be really true is a lot of planning used to happen around channels. I think it's back to your question even, like is Facebook better than YouTube is better? Is like retail better direct to consumer or better like in a shopping? And I feel like those kind of verticalized categories are starting to be less true or less predictable, and more there's a horizontal story that may cross all those verticals, something that may cross broadcast, feature, Insta story, retail, direct to consumer, and people with ubiquitous distribution, they tend to follow characters and stories. And so that's our thesis is like tip the way you're looking at it on the side and kind of look at the story and how it traverses all those different touch points rather than the channels themselves.
I have time for one more quick question. No? Okay, so let's wrap it up with, I want to hear, Spencer, you've got the best seat down there, so I'll start with you, but I want to hear what's next? Like your crystal ball, what do you think is going to be the next time he's going to be on this end?
Can I switch seats over there?
Yeah. And the influencers, or any news. Breaking news, any announcements you want to make?
I'll start with, so in the influencer space, I think what's really fascinating is to watch how brands are aligning themselves with influencers and creating their own businesses and their own brands alongside those influencers. And it's something that I think folks at the agency world have seen for a while. In the beauty space, brands are starting to launch new products, and the most innovative, exciting things that are happening in beauty right now are really driven by the influencers. And the smart brands are going beyond the sort of paper, post kind of transactional relationship to a strategic relationship where they're working closely with these influencers. They're helping them with their passion projects, the brands they want to launch. And it's really driven by consumers at the end of the day because they're that connection with the influencer is coming up with new innovation, new ideas, and new exciting things.
Awesome.
And then, what was the other question?
Breaking news.
I'm
Real
moving,
quick.
I'm moving to Nashville. So if anybody lives in Nashville or has connections to Nashville,
Send him restaurant ideas.
Restaurant recommendations.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Less than
All right,
30
let's talk.
seconds each, please. Okay, but you were great. So, Isaac.
I think just brand safety. That's going to be the number one concern and priority and pressure. So I think I'm just looking forward to see how people tackle it, whether it's AI or things that make it a lot easier, whether it's just a lot of human time. Because it
Right.
takes a lot of human time and a lot of subjectivity. So
Right.
that's one thing.
You need a spa day.
Yeah.
Just for us, we focus really heavily on consumer products and leveraging our clients' platforms to sell their own products. If brands are spending that much money for them to hawk the product, then there must be some power there. So taking the ownership into the client's hands and really allowing them to build their own businesses and build their own brands.
Awesome. Greg.
I have no idea where the influencer space is going.
Where are you going?
Realness.
I don't know that either. But I was going to say there's obviously a lot more people creating content because it's much easier to create content these days, and everyone thinks they're an influencer, although most aren't. So there's a lot of opportunities of people that are going to break through because the life expectancy of influencers, it doesn't necessarily last a lifetime. So yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of new people pop up, and maybe if you're a brand, to try to link up with them before they, become huge.
Awesome. Owen?
I think that talent, story creator people, and brands, marketers are going to learn a lot more about each other's businesses over
I
the next
hope
couple
so.
of years.
Yeah.
I think they're used to dealing with each other through a lot of different intermediaries, and I think that they'll both thicken up their capabilities on understanding and dealing with each other, and there'll be a lot of business that gets done that way.
What a beautiful world that would be.
Not for media agencies.
I'd follow up on that with, I think what's exciting to me about what I feel everything's headed to is that all these divisions are starting to break down, and it's just becoming one business, and everybody can interact with each other and sort of figure out what's best. And that from the talent side, that influencers maybe aren't being looked at as an influencer or someone that just has distribution, or that kid who got popular for no reason, but like
Bottle flipping, that's a reason.
Yeah, exactly. But like actual talent that's intelligent and built a business, and so you should work with them as you would traditional talent.
Awesome. That's such a positive way to wrap it up here. Let's give our incredible panelists a round of applause. Panelists, let's give our audience a round of applause. Great questions. Thank you all for attending. And please get in as many panels as you can, especially mine later today at 4 and Thursday at 2:15.